Okay, so as soon as you hear the new, what's that? What's that? What's that? What's that? Well, well, well! Hey, good to see you, Tay. Good to see you, man. Congrats.
What's up, fellas? Hey, thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Hello, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Rich. Good evening, Mark. Welcome to another emergency podcast. We've been doing a lot of these lately, especially the last 2 weeks for the Just the podcast. My name is Raz Guevara, along with my co-host Rich McLeod and our executive producer Mark Levine. I mean, a lot of shit's been happening over at One Jets Drive. I don't think I've ever had such an emotional roller coaster in such a short amount of time. Like we did last night. Last night we recorded a miserable podcast that went
literally
over an hour.
24 hours ago.
That went over an hour, and we were just like so down in the dumps about this team, and slowly we seem to be all, back on board with this fucking team that we love and hate at the same time. Rich, you weren't with us in our bitch session last night because you were handling real life duties. It was probably for the best. We mentioned that you should have gotten the game ball last night for your decision not to be part of the recording session because you were in Maine handling grown up responsibilities. But tell me, man, tell me what are your thoughts, your immediate thoughts with this trade?
Yeah, so it was definitely interesting. I just walked in the door back from Maine. Which is why this podcast is coming out a little bit later. It's really interesting though because I watched the game last night in a cabin in our last night with like a bunch of friends and almost started laughing at how predictable the futility was of just like, oh, I know exactly how this game is going to end.
Yeah,
and it happened the exact same way. And it's just like, damn, I think I crossed the threshold into apathy at that moment. And I kind of just like went to sleep like, okay, whatever. I made the dumb decision to write a newsletter and make a podcast about the Jets when it's the Mets going to, the NLCS, maybe the World Series, and just feeling like I've made a lot of bad choices in my life. Slept in a bit today because I'm on vacation from work. And when I woke up, the Davante Adams trade had happened maybe 5 minutes before I had woken up. So I'd gone to bed thinking it's over. I'm emotionally detached. I woke up to seeing that news. And I have to say, while I'm happy that they did it, and I will talk myself into all of the things in the coming days, being that immediately after like continued dejection for the third straight week, I was kind of just like, okay, like cool, I guess.
Yeah.
Which is not, it's not like the best analysis. It's not even necessarily logical. It's just like
Right.
when you cross that point as a fan in a season, which happens at certain times, it's kind of hard to like come back from it, and to be put in a position where you almost have to come back from it immediately was very unusual. And this is also a trade that we've been hearing about and rumored for not just a couple of weeks, but over a year. So there always kind of felt like there was this eventuality coming to it. So my true initial reaction was, well, really weird with it. I'm definitely excited about it. I'll be updating the Madden roster as soon as it's going to let me do that. And we'll get into the analysis of it in a few minutes of like how I think it's actually going to help this team in a lot of ways. But yeah, that was my unusual kind of like stilted reaction to it this morning.
And look, man, your reaction is I'm pretty sure similar to every single person who roots for this team. Mark and I were, we were dejected. We were so like just crushed last night because of everything you just mentioned, because the team lost in predictable fashion for a third consecutive, game. And we were just wondering out loud whether is this as good as Aaron Rodgers is going to get? Like, is this is the end of this elite quarterback. Are we never going to see that player again? And we went to bed, and Mark, you did your best to try to talk me off the ledge, but like we legitimately were like just depressed last night. And this morning we get the news. Mark, tell me about your thought process, and tell me what was going through your head when you first got that message that that was potentially happening, and then eventually happened.
Yeah, I mean, literally 24 hours prior to this recording, we were in our other recording for the game recap.
Yeah.
And I was slowly making my way onto that ledge with you. And then all of a sudden, here comes Davante Adams, and he's like,
Which I will say, you did a terrible job. You're supposed to be the voice of reason, the positive guy. Rich and I are supposed to be the just the
and I try
buildings on
so hard.
fires.
I try so hard, but sometimes you doubt yourself and you take a couple of steps, and then here comes Davante Adams, and he's like, "Hey, buddy, come on, it's not so bad.
Just
Take a
pops
couple of
behind
steps
you
over
and
here.
smiles.
Yeah, come on. You don't want to do this. Give me a hug. We're good."
I mean, look, I experienced the same reaction that Rich did. I was so like just completely done with this team last night and into this morning. And even when the news happened, I was just like, well, can he tackle? I tweeted like can he tackle? Is he gonna fix, me? Is he gonna fix our run defense? Is he gonna fix our atrocious, like just
I
mental
think
lapses?
the message that I sent to you after it happened was, "Oh, can he set the edge and
Yes.
tackle Josh Allen?"
And so I experienced the exact same emotional roller coaster that Rich did. But I'll tell you, man, once I fucking saw him I'm popping up behind Aaron Rodgers, and the stupid smile on Aaron Rodgers' face, and I'm like, God damn it. And I slowly, as the day went by, I'm like, fuck, I am back on board. It doesn't take a lot. Like when you love someone and they hurt you, it doesn't take a lot for them to convince you that they're not going to hurt you anymore. And I've been doing this I've been 40 years old. I've been doing this the majority of my life. Like I've gotten glimpses that I've held on to, that this team will eventually be a successful team. And it takes very little for me to get excited. And this is that little. This is just window dressing. This is, going therapy shopping when you're up to your neck in bills. This is the equivalent of that, right? Like this is like putting a fresh coat of paint on a car that's engine is failing. So I mean, let's take it out for a spin and see how it rides and how it makes us feel after this. But there are some like legitimate football questions that we need to discuss a little bit. There are some immediate changes that are going to happen to this team. Number one being Garrett Wilson. What impact does this have on Garrett Wilson, Rich, and what impact does this have on Mike Williams and the rest of the receiving core?
Yeah, I think, we talked a bit about Davante Adams in one of our recent podcasts. I can't remember if that was after the Minnesota one or Robert Saleh getting fired. There's been a lot lately.
They're all blending into
they're all
one.
blending in.
They're all the same game anyway.
Same game 3 times. Same emergency podcast. But in terms of Garrett Wilson, I think we talked about it. I think it's going to be really positive for him. I think this allows you to play him in the slot a bit more, not the entire game, but you're going to be able to mix him in there. The defense is going to have to focus on Davante as like the true number one wide receiver who has done it for over a decade and like still has it. I don't think he's past his prime to the point where like some people have suggested like he's been playing football with Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew the last 2 years and like still puts up pretty good numbers when he plays.
Yeah.
I think that attention is going to free a lot of things up, not just for Garrett Wilson, but for Breece Hall, for Braylon Allen, if they ever give him the football again, even the tight ends. So I think in that regard, it's going to be really positive with Mike Williams. I don't really know. Mike Williams has done the wrong thing on a game-losing interception 2 weeks in a row. I think he's got like 10 or 11 catches the entire year. He has no touchdowns. There are points in every single game where they just seem to forget that he's on the team, and you ask yourself, why did they even really sign this guy? And there was a report a report earlier today that, potentially the Jets could be looking to shop Williams now that they have Davante Adams. I still think that that's really short-sighted. Would love to see depth on this team, and having depth where with the addition of Adams, where you have, Adams as your number one, Garrett Wilson, Mike Williams, and then you have Lazard, who's been much more productive this year with Rodgers, even with all the drops. And then past that, it's like, Xavier Gibson and whoever else is rounding out that unit. That to me looks a lot better than just like swapping Williams out for Adams. That's still an improvement, but you're still not super deep and an injury away from being in a pretty precarious situation. So, I mean, reading the room today, as much as I was able to see things online, it seems like Williams is probably going to wind up out of here, especially with Rodgers kind of throwing him under the bus a little bit last night.
Not a little bit. He squarely
a lot of it.
Had him lay and roll the bus over a few times for good measure this morning as well.
Yeah, so I think they're probably looking to move on from him. I would prefer that they didn't, but yeah, that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. And the report that just came out a couple hours ago is that the Jets are planning to make Mike Williams available for trade after acquiring Davante Adams. So I agree with you. Like, I think depth is more important. Like, injuries happen. You are also trading for a player who, who's quote unquote coming from a hamstring issue, but there is going to be some time to kind of get acclimated. That chemistry's Alan Lazard is a perfect example. Once you develop that chemistry, it's like riding a bike. But I agree with you. I feel like the biggest challenge, outside of like the schematic, things working him into the system, the biggest challenge is going to be the locker room. And Mark, I want to play a clip from you, from Jeff Ulbrich, when he was asked about Mike Williams specifically, and how he handles this is going to be critical for the rest of the season. He's been preaching accountability. I mean, if if a player continuously makes the same mistake and essentially costs you 2 games, those 2 mistakes that allegedly Mike Williams committed cost us 2 games, one would stand to reason that you put the player out, you put him out on the market. So let me play you the clip and then tell me what your thoughts are about how Ulbrich has handled it.
What becomes of Mike Williams now? Does he just, first of all, how is he? I mean, with his injury, and secondly, I mean, what becomes of him role wise?
Yeah, he got evaluated for a head, and he cleared the concussion protocol. So from that standpoint, he's good to go. I think we'll figure that out in the next couple of days, how all these pieces kind of fit together. It's an exciting and a good problem to have, because we've got a lot of different guys with a lot of different skill sets that can do a lot of different things. So Todd and his staff will have, some sleepless nights with some good problems.
So, I mean, he didn't quite answer the question.
Todd and his staff, by the way.
Exactly. He kind of like pushed it off to the side. But Mark, tell me, like, what do you think is going to be the biggest challenge as Ulbrich navigates this rather delicate situation with the receiver, balancing the depth that is critical for down the stretch, potential guarding for potential injuries, and navigating a locker room that he's been preaching accountability and kind of being held responsible for paying attention to the details.
Yeah, I think it's a lot easier now than it was 24 hours ago to preach accountability with the acquisition of Davante Adams. You can sit Mike Williams down because now you do have that extra guy. I would not trade him. They don't have the depth. Garrett Wilson and Alan Lazard are basically your only receivers right now. Before Davante got there, they're the only ones who have touchdowns. Which is really crazy. Only four players have scored touchdowns for the Jets: Garrett Wilson, Alan Lazard, Breece Hall, and Braylon Allen. Xavier Gibson has basically been non-existent. Malachi Corley can't even be active most games. So we have no idea what's going on there.
I forgot to list him when we went through the receivers.
Yeah, he's completely an afterthought at this point after they were like, oh, we had a first round grade on him. We tried to trade up in the second round. We're so glad we got him with the first pick in the third round. And he's inactive most games.
Yeah.
So basically your only two receivers were Garrett Wilson and Alan Lazard. Now you have the opportunity, if Mike Williams does anything, you can sit him down, and you have Davante Adams, Garrett Wilson, and Alan Lazard to fall back on. You don't hopefully have to run as many multiple tight end sets,
Right.
because the tight end blocking has been a big issue with this team. I think it's much easier. It lessens the stress on everyone else, and it does make things a little easier for Jeff Ulbrich to be able to hold players accountable, because it's a lot easier to hold players accountable and sit them down for plays or quarters, however long you need, when you do have that depth.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And it's again, we didn't talk about it yesterday, but they did run a lot of 3 receiver sets, more than I remember in any of the first couple of games. They minimized the usage of the 2 tight end sets, and that had a lot of impact on the running game. Breece Hall had more room to run, and just various different ways of getting Garrett Wilson involved. Rich, tell me how you think this could potentially impact Garrett Wilson from just being a better receiver overall, and how it could potentially impact the less number of targets that he's going to undoubtedly receive now that Davante Adams is going to be lining up alongside him.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it in terms of like opening things up. Like, yeah, he's going to get less targets. I mean, I believe he's right now the most targeted receiver in all of football, but he's got a good amount of receptions, especially the last 2 weeks. But in terms of receptions, yards, touchdowns, it's not lining up with the amount of targets that he has. That amount of targets because, one, he's so good, but two, because of how lacking the rest of the guys have been so far. I think this is going to balance the offense a lot more.
100%.
I think Garrett Wilson's going to do a lot more with a lot less targets now, because he's not going to be going up against the number 1 cornerback all the time. And even if he is, they're not going to be able to do the same things. Like, they're not always going to be able to play, like, throw a double team at him or play a safety over the top on him and also account for Davante Adams. Like, there's just only so many things that a defense can do to account for these guys, and having either both of them on the outside or having Davante on the outside, Garrett lined up on the inside, I think is going to do a lot for this offense. And in terms of just like making him a better receiver, obviously Alan Lazard has been able to kind of like teach Garrett Wilson about playing with Aaron Rodgers, but that's only going to go so far, especially when it's coming from a guy who like just isn't as talented as Garrett Wilson. It's like having a guy who's abjectly worse at everything than you, telling you what to do. It's
how dare you, Rich? How dare you? Alan Lazard is carrying this team offensively, and you're denigrating.
I mean, he literally leads the team in touchdowns with 5.
Yes,
your face says it all.
All that being said, when that's coming from Davante Adams, who not only has all the experience with Rodgers, but has the success, has the pedigree, has been a number 1 receiver for as long as he has, I think that comes with a lot more weight to it. I think he can just teach things to Garrett naturally that other receivers could not do. And, I think that's going to be a huge experience for him as well. That's basically like having another coach for the wide receivers in a way that they haven't had before, whether it was, like Lazard just not being capable of teaching that to them, or, Garrett just like not being willing to listen or able to take it all in because of who it's coming from. I think that this is going to be massively beneficial. And they moved the ball the best we've seen them, probably all year, other than the Patriots game against the Bills on Monday night. But the main problem was still like they got to the red zone and then everything kind of went to shit. I think, Davante is going to open things up there as well. So, and in terms of the X's and O's and what it's going to do for Garrett Wilson and all that stuff, I don't see any negatives here. And when you look at the compensation, I think it's all what we kind of expected. It's a 3rd round pick, which is what we all kind of went in being like, yeah, that's totally fine. You're all in. Keep being all in, because none of these guys are making the picks after this year if it doesn't go well anyways.
Exactly.
And the conditions on it, like, I have no issues with them, because if the Jets get to an AFC title game, or a Super Bowl, which is one of the conditions, other one is Davante Adams being like 1st or 2nd all pro as a receiver, that means that the Jets turned things around
and became a high-powered offense.
So if that happens, then it's worth a 2nd round pick. Otherwise, we'll see how the things go.
Yeah, no, I think you said two things that I want to come back to. Number one, you mentioned the fact that Garrett is the most targeted receiver in football. That being said, he does not lead the league in receptions. Just because he's being targeted does not mean he's making these receptions. They are basically force feeding him in an effort to jumpstart the chemistry between him and Rodgers. And I think Davante Adams is, first of all, when you add more talent to a locker room, it's just a net positive, more often than not. But you're right. He is going to teach him how to be a professional. He's going to teach him in ways that Alan Lazard just simply cannot, just because of who he is and the pedigree that he brings. One thing I do like to want to point out is he also brings a certain fire that has been lacking on this team. Davante Adams is a mercurial wide receiver to a T. Everything that you think of these diva, angry, tossing helmet receivers, that's who he is. He plays with emotion, plays with anger, screams and yells, and that is something that's been lacking on the sidelines. Like, everybody's so apathetic on the sidelines. Mike Williams is a giant man, but he's soft spoken. He doesn't get angry. He you know what I'm saying? Lazard, like, there's just like no fire on the sidelines, and I'm hoping that Davante Adams brings that fire with him and infects other people and be like, look, we should care when we're fucking up. We should be angry on the sidelines. We should throw our fucking helmets. We should call each other out and yell each other and get in people's faces. Like, I feel like that's what he's going to bring. And I feel like Aaron Rodgers has been reluctant to do that because he does not want to go back to that, because he's been that. And now Davante Adams gets to be the bad cop to Aaron Rodgers seemingly playing good cop this entire time. So I'm excited, man. Listen, it doesn't fix all of our problems. It does not fix all of our problems. But if we're not going to play defense and we're not going to shut people down, can we fucking at least outscore them? Can we at least get in some shootouts? Like, I mean, at least if we lose in a different way and we can toss out this script that we've been, playing these last 3 games, I'll be happy. I'll be content.
Yeah. Maybe we can get a goddamn game-winning drive to
Hopefully we don't need a game-winning drive. Hopefully
we don't need a game-winning drive.
Yeah, you come out firing right away and you just cruise from there.
Hopefully we don't have to rely on Greg the Leg to miss a field goal. Hopefully we don't have to rely on Michael Clemens to make a tackle. I mean, if those 2 things happen for us to win, I mean, we're in deep shit anyway. So, anyway, gentlemen, thank you very much. I feel like that's a great place for us to end it. Again, I agree with both of you. This does not solve all of our problems, but overall, it's a net positive, number 1. Number 2, brings a little fucking excitement to us. Like, we've been fucking depressed and had nothing to cheer about. Like, gives us a little something to root for, a little something to hope for. Any last thoughts before we go back to sleep?
Just one question for both of you.
Yeah.
Does the Jets getting Adams change how you expect this game against Pittsburgh to go on Sunday night?
For me, and I'm sorry, Mark, I'm cutting you off. For me, it does, for a couple of different reasons. Justin Fields is not playing. It's going to be Russell Wilson. They've announced him as the starter. Davante Adams, there was initial questions whether he was going to play. He was like, "Oh no, I'm playing. I'm making my debut on Sunday." Like, that right there is like, okay, he's fucking ready to go. Like, he hasn't even practiced yet, and he's already like basically saying he's playing on Sunday. It just, the offense was clicking. the new schemes that they've put in and the different creative ways that they were figuring out a way to get Garrett the ball was working. Playing the 12 personnel, playing 11 personnel is just not functioning. And like we're running 3 receiver sets, we're moving Garrett around. And I've been asking for this for the entire year. Give me Garrett as the Y with Mike Williams as the X on the same side. Like you force the defense to commit to one of those two, and it should give Rodgers the ability to kind of pick and choose. We haven't done it, maybe because Aaron doesn't trust Mike, and that inherently changes when you line up Davante Adams. It's just for me, I feel like it's just I'm a blissful idiot, and it definitely changes how I see this game coming up. And shit, I mean, if fucking Davante Adams gets 2 touchdowns, I'm gonna get a Davante Adams jersey. Sorry, I'm a fucking moron. I have a problem, and hopefully I don't regret it. What about you, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, I think this definitely changes the way I'm viewing the game. I think the biggest thing with Davante Adams right now in this game is going to be the Steelers have a really good pass rush. TJ Watt, Cam Hayward, they're going to bring the pressure. And there was one play in the game where we saw there was a lot of pressure coming from the Bills right up the middle. Aaron Rodgers got the ball away quick to Mike Williams, turned around, it was right there, he drops it. I think the biggest thing with Davante Adams is going to be he's going to have that anticipation. He's going to know what Rodgers is thinking.
Yeah.
So plays like that, they're going straight to him, and he's going to be able to make that play.
Yeah.
Whereas before, Mike Williams didn't make the play. You don't know if Garrett's going to make that play. There have been a lot of times where him and Aaron haven't been on the same page this season.
Yeah.
Davante just has that built-in chemistry with him. So this offensive line has not been playing well recently. The Steelers are going to bring the pressure, and I think Davante is going to take a lot of that pressure off of Aaron.
The nonverbal communication with Lazard, I think immediately carries over to Davante.
Tenfold.
Those times where they're playing off of Lazard and like he just doesn't even make a signal, he just looks at him and he throws those immediate balls immediately at Lazard. Like those are all going to go to Davante, who is a much better receiver and can get you some yak yards. I think it just changes the way this attack looks. And you're right, a best way to battle a quick pass rush is those quick passes and that nonverbal communication and those signals that Rodgers likes to do. Is just going to be it's just going to be more efficient. It's going to be more efficient with Davante Adams. Fuck, I'm like excited again. God damn it, man.
Usually we don't get excited till like Thursday.
They're gonna fucking break my heart. And tomorrow I'm gonna see him in the Jets practice gear, and I'm gonna see him running, and they're gonna do those fucking slow-mo videos on social media of him catching a ball from Rodgers.
And he's gonna have to throw Malachi Corley a watch to change his number and give us our third
not even
different
Fuck,
guy
no.
with the number 17.
Does Malachi Corley even have a number? Like he can't even get on the field.
Fucking jersey. No, hell no. Rookie, I'll buy you a Chipotle gift card. That's it. Give me that fucking jersey.
We'll have to get used to the third different Jet receiver wearing 17 in a year.
One thing I'll say, like, couldn't they just do this last week? Like,
the one thing I'll say about that, which is like, I think it was how we all felt in the moment, and I think how like some of the national media people are saying, like, I heard a couple people on WFAN this morning be like, "Well, it's too late. Like, it's 6 games in. It's not too late. We just wanted it to happen sooner." Like, the Raiders still have a say in this, and the Raiders did not want to give him up last week.
They were holding out for a higher pick, and look,
and
Joe Douglas, stuck
what
to
happened.
his ground. Yeah, and I suspect the trade was agreed upon before the game ended because
Rodgers said he found out at 12:45.
Yeah, so I suspect like the groundwork of the trade was already kind of laid out, and maybe if the Raiders hold on and wait to see how our game ended.
I mean, it had to be for Davante to take a red-eye flight to New York and be at the practice facility like that.
Yeah, like it. So they blinked. And look, one thing I will say, like, there are way bigger messes around the league. I mean, shit, we're not Cowboys fans. We don't have our owner threatening radio reporters. I mean, our owner is an idiot, and he is consistently embarrassing us with his.
Our head coach is not yelling at fans.
our head coach is not fighting with fans in the stands. Like they're like our quarterback is not a sexual predator with a guaranteed contract. I mean, there's way bigger messes, and that's the last night when I went to bed. Mark and I had a little exchange about like, oh my God, we're in deep shit. Like blah 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 blah. We went all in, to use a poker term. Like all our chips are in because it's Rodgers or bust. We don't have a backup plan. But fuck it, there's way bigger messes. Jerry Jones could be our owner. Deshaun Watson could be our quarterback. Nick Sirianni could be our head coach.
There were a lot of fans that wanted Deshaun Watson as our quarterback a couple of years ago too.
Well, that's a podcast conversation for a different day. Gentlemen, we said we were going to do 5-10 minutes, and now we are approaching 25 minutes. Thank you both for keeping me sane these last few weeks, having thorough, enjoyable conversation with you guys. Hopefully the team will give us some more good vibes as the season progresses. But thank you very much. And with that, we're going to wrap up. Thank you very much for listening. See you guys next week.